Revolution Radio proudly presents, live from the heart of the Blue Ridge, Roanoke, Virginia. It's the Just Bernard Show with host Bernard Alvarez. Join Bernard as he shares topics that reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience, including world liberty, the esoteric, suppressed technologies, spiritual ascension, and human consciousness. Humanity has awakened, and our time has come to realize our full potential. And now, live from the Star City, your host, Bernard Alvarez.
And hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We've got another fantastic guest for you today. Billee Sharp will be joining us in just a few moments, and we are going to be dedicating today's show to Better Homekeeping, an eco guide to better homekeeping. So stick around. In just a moment, we're going to have Billee come on. Before we do that, let me welcome our assistant producer of the Just Bernard Show and assistant director of the G.I.C. Treva Knott is joining me from Winnipeg, Manitoba. Hello, how are you today?
Hello, I'm doing very well. How about you?
I'm very good. I'm enjoying the view out my window right now. Actually, it's like a snow globe. The mountain is completely whitewashed, and I wish it was Christmas. It's just so pretty outside right now. But how are things in Winnipeg? You were freezing the other day, and we were warm. Now, did you guys warm up now that we're freezing?
No, we're still freezing.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so I just want to remind everybody that Treva will be in the chat room taking your questions live. You can go ahead and type in your questions to myself or Billee Sharp in the chat room here on Revolution Radio, and we'll make sure to answer it for you. We have a lot of stuff to cover today, and I'm very excited. Before we do that, I just wanted to acknowledge that a great master of music and counterculture has transitioned overnight last night or late yesterday. Pete Seeger went to his new resting place and home. And for those of you that don't know, Pete Seeger, a folk hero, a counterculture icon, an Occupy protester. I mean, this man was a hero to many of us in the counterculture and has been for decades, and his work will never be forgotten. And we just want to take this moment to honor him and acknowledge his transition. So thank you, Pete, for everything you've done for all of us and inspiring so many of us throughout the decades. I hope that we will continue to take that inspiration and move forward to continue to create a better world. Anyway, with that being said, and in a way of creating a better world, one of the best ways that we can create a better world is to stop using poisonous chemicals, to stop eating poisonous chemicals, and so many other ideas that we're going to talk about in today's broadcast. Joining me live from San Francisco, speaking of counterculture, one of my favorite places in the world, Billee Sharp is joining us. She was born and raised in a little village in Dorset, England, where she spent a lot of time at the Garden Gate waving to passersby. She studied anthropology and ancient history at University College of London. Billee went on to style herself a career as a contemporary art curator and gallerist. Working with Damien Hirst and others, she opened Building 1, a huge gallery in an old biscuit factory, and mounted a series of group shows which contributed to the emergence of the YBAs. Quickly disenchanted with the art world, she turned her interest to the underground house music scene flourishing in London. Not long afterward, Billee moved to California. In 1993, she took up residence in San Francisco and started both a family and record label with Scotsman Jonas Sharp, a pioneering electronic musician. The birthplace of counterculture has been a wellspring of inspiration, and Billee has recently written Lemons and Lavender, the Eco Guide to Better Housekeeping. So let us welcome to today's show, Billee Sharp. Welcome, Billee. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Bernard.
I'm very happy to have you, and I'm very much looking forward to picking your brain on all these wonderful ideas that you've offered to us in your book, Lemons and Lavender. So, Billee, can you start off? You've had a very interesting life. It's funny, Dorset. I wonder if that's close to where Yvonne lives, Trevor. We'll have to look that up. It sounds familiar. But I wanted to ask you, Billee, what inspired you? First of all, let me just start with this. I, too, come from, how shall we say, a hoity-toity background, as far as like the art scene and the high fashion scene. And I can understand why you would want to leave that. What was your inspiration to want to move into another direction in your life?
Well, I left college having studied social anthropology, and I lived in London in a great a housing co-op house with Damien Hirst and this other character, Carl Friedman, and we were all kind of outsiders in a way. I mean, in England, London is or I should say in Britain, London's a bit, it's a big melting pot. It's a kind of crucible for, people who want to be involved in stuff. So we'd all ended up at college in London, and it's a big eye opener if you come from the provinces. It's a different world entirely, and everything was going on. But we also felt that everything was going on, but we weren't invited. And Carl and Damien were both from Leeds, which is in the north, and I was from Dorset, which is in the south. And they felt even more than I did that they were outsiders, because of course their accent, was different, and me coming from the south, I kind of fit in more, and being quite a kind of flamboyant young thing, I was like not afraid, to kind of put ourselves out. Anyway, we thought, hey, we want to do this art thing too. So we looked for buildings, and we approached the owners and got buildings for free, and then went to art sort of collectors, people like Charles Saatchi, and said, hey, we got this space and we want to do a show. And so we kind of opened this other door to getting exposure in the art world. And, we were quite savvy about it, and it started a trend of other people doing that. But, my feeling was we were opening it up to change it. But once we'd been in that world for a little while, I realized that it just wasn't going to happen easily. And actually, most people and most of the artists were happy to become part of what was going on, and I really wasn't. I saw that because I wasn't an artist per se, and that I was the kind of I was wearing a few hats. I was right. The tourist, I was the dealer, I was the person who was writing people's theses and press releases and what have you, and I just had this total epiphany after a few years, and actually at a rave.
Right on.
And I just sort of went, oh my God, I'm just becoming this, I had this great opportunity to kind of look in on my life, and I just went, oh, no wonder you're getting these terrible hives that no one can tell you. I mean, I thought I had AIDS or something. I was getting these terrible rashes. And I just realized I wasn't happy with my role in, I love art. My dad's a sculptor. I've always loved art. But the art world for me was a very exclusive and a very money-oriented investment kind of. I didn't like the people I was working with, not the artists, but the everyone else you had.
Right, the business side of it.
Business, and I realized that I was walking away from quite a pretty penny, and but it was a very liberating moment for me. I was 27, and it was later that I realized that's kind of my Saturn return moment, and I had a very strong intuition that what I was doing wasn't ever going to make me happy, and I was if I reconciled to the way the art business worked, then it was going to be a whole. I saw myself at 37, kind of sloshing around in designer clothes with a big goblet of expensive wine, just being an absolute nightmare. And I was just like, no, run away and do something else. And I did.
Well, and to touch on the subject for a moment, I can't help but relate a lot to your story. I mean, I come, same thing, South Beach, the high fashion world. I was a stylist. I dealt with all the models and big money clients and whatnot. And I can't help but wonder if you felt the same thing I did. And one of the reasons why I walked away myself was the fact that while the artist or the creative side of it was wonderful, the people are very creative, they're very inspiring, but when you're dealing with the business side of it, it almost feels as if you're a servant to them, that you are there to make them money and to serve their whim versus them literally appreciating the work that you're doing.
Well, I mean, I feel like art is very difficult to define, and creativity is also, I mean, art can exist within structures which reinforce a lot of things that I find personally very distasteful: exclusivity, class or caste attitudes, all that kind of thing. And a lot of the time the artists, these wonderful, it's just like, who could not meet someone like, say, Bruce Nauman, or, an artist, any of these guys, they could be great people, but then they're in that world. And I was looking at my contemporaries, people like Damien, and going, hey, this is like disgusting, and he was more like, hey, this is how it is, and we got to, we have to rise to the top of this. And I was just like, no, not me. That won't be me, because, the really important things about art get lost when art becomes a business. And when I came to San Francisco, there was a very unsensational art movement going on here. People that were using the streets for art, and that whole idea that art could, and that's why we were doing warehouse shows, or at least why I thought we were doing warehouse shows, was because we wanted to take art out of its context and back into people's lives. So people were, you walk into a private gallery, and the, girl who's sitting at the desk kind of gives you a couple of glances. And, if you don't look like someone who is a potential buyer, they're going to give you kind of a raised eyebrow and, no love, basically. And I didn't like that. And I didn't want to be, I wanted to have a space where people came in and just went, wow, this is a crazy space to find all this crazy stuff in. And, just engage with the art without sort of feeling like, oh, I'm in this posh gallery and this posh girl is, kind of mean. And so I've got to try and impress that, I wanted more of a dialogue, particularly with contemporary art, which, most people feel very excluded by. And it's like, well, so the artists are great, but they're living in this bubble where people are giving them the room to express their stuff, but only because, it's making them money. And I was just like, no. I got to find a way in life to be creative without feeling that, I'm someone's barrel organ monkey.
That's a very great analogy, and I'm assuming or guessing that you did find that in your writing. If I understand, you've written more than Lemons and Lavender. When did you start writing?
Well, I started writing. When do you start writing? When I was a little kid, I wrote a series of stories for my sister called Poo Poo the Poodle, which was about this poodle who just pooed everywhere inappropriately. And she loved it. But I've been writing. I actually don't I don't have a lot of published work to my name. I've written a lot of articles, but I'm a wannabe fiction writer, and it's really hard. I mean, I think I set myself a high benchmark, but that's for me, being a writer or being an artist or being creative in any way is not about so much what you've achieved as what you're trying to achieve. And, at this point, I don't know whether I'll ever publish any fiction, but I'm still trying.
Well, you keep doing it because I agree with you. I believe it's just the act of creating that matters. And if you get a paycheck at the end of the day, that's even better.
Right. Well, I mean, we all need money, and it's a funny time to be alive, really, because there's so many conflicting ideas about what constitutes success and what constitutes happiness, and it's a minefield, really. And I feel like in one short life, if you're really engaging and you're truly seeking what makes you happy yourself, you're going to go through a lot of different, you're going to wear a lot of different hats, and you're going to discard a lot of them. And hopefully, you'll find what works for you. But I feel like a lot of people settle for a lot less than they deserve. And I think that, really my ideas behind Lemons and Lavender was not to say, here's, how to be really successful at what you do. It's like how to give yourself the opportunity to try and do what you think you want to do. I mean, I feel like a lot of people get shut down because they feel like they have to do certain things to legitimize in society. Well, we all do. We all have to pay the rent, pay the mortgage, put food on the table, all this kind of stuff. But it's I hate it when people kind of look all wistful and go, oh, you're a writer. I wanted to be a writer. It's like, well, what stopped you? It's so difficult to make any money at that. Well, yeah, but you can still write. You can do whatever you do, and you can come home and you can write, or you can come home and you can watch the telly.
Yep.
Depends what you want. But having said that, it's not like, this book will give you the discipline to. It's just that idea of, seeing your life, seeing the big picture, and seeing what you really want. And hey, if you want to go to work and come home and watch telly, more power to you. It's no big judgment, but I think a lot of people want to do creative things, and I really think that we all it makes life more fun, and it connects you to more people, and it's just great. I mean, hey, you paint a few pictures, and your friends paint a few pictures. Throw your own show. Take everything off the walls in your living room, and invite people to a private view, and it's just, it's not about, being hugely successful. It's about being fulfilled, and creativity, I think, is one of the basic things that truly makes us happy.
I couldn't agree with you more, Billy. And as you're speaking, I can't help but see the greatness and the grandness of what is happening, at least in the God, I don't even know if you want to call it the alternative culture, but what we're seeing is a blurring of the lines, kind of like what you mentioned earlier, a blurring of the lines of what success is, a blurring of the lines of what economy is. I mean, we're seeing co-ops starting. We're hearing words like free economy or energy exchange. We're seeing more and more people giving away their work for free. I mean, I myself, I literally work off of donations, and I barely make a living, but I make a living. And this is a form of that new economy that we're talking about. So as we see this blurring of the lines, I feel that what your book does for people like myself and for people that are looking to and toward an alternative way of doing things, I feel that Lemons and Lavender is a bit of a handbook for people that are looking for ways to lower their bills, looking for ways for home remedies, for homeschooling. I mean, so much that we still don't know the answer to. And we always talk about, at least those of us in the consciousness movement are always talking about creating the new paradigm. And it's not about I don't want to say recycling something old. Some people talk about socialism. Some people talk about tribalism. I don't think it has anything to do with that. I feel we're still kind of like, wading in the water, wading with a D in the water, trying to figure out what is the next step. And I feel that as we're creating these new ideals, it's very helpful to have a little help with, again, whether it be cooking cheaply or lowering your electric bill or anything to that effect. What are your ideas what's your sense and your feeling of this whole change that seems to be occurring around us?
Well, I mean, I think it's been a long time coming. I feel like a lot of the people that that I draw my inspiration from, apart from the people that we all know about: Stewart Brand, Alicia Bay Laurel, Terence McKenna, the people that inspire me day to day are, often in their 70s and have been living in an alternative lifestyle since the 60s. So they really have inhabited that space where they're not engaging in the consumer culture. And I think a lot of young people, when I say young, I mean, my eldest son is 20. So a lot of people of his generation have grown up with, one or two, in some cases two generations of counterculturists, people who are going against the current of the consumer mentality and the, buy more, consume more, happiness through materialism. And so they're really, they don't need the argument presented to them. They're all about how, realizing themselves without doing things which to them are perhaps morally reprehensible. I mean, I know a lot of my son's contemporaries, and, admittedly, they're kids who've grown up in San Francisco, and Northern California is somewhere where, there's a very strong countercultural element. But, these are kids who have a moral perspective on what they want to support. They don't buy from certain sports brands because they know they're involved in sweatshop labor, or they're going to support people that they believe are heading in the right direction for the planet. So hey, my son, someone said to him recently when he was back for Christmas, hey, you're still wearing that T-shirt. And Jasper says, yeah, it's a great T-shirt. It's made of hemp and it's lasting really well. And I'll probably be wearing it next year when you see me too. And it's a new perspective. It's like, really, you think it's cool to have 20 T-shirts that are made from, from sweatshop labor and dyed with inks that are poisonous and are in fact flowing as we speak into rivers and poisoning ecosystems? You think that's cool? I don't. I would rather have one T-shirt that costs 3 times as much as blah blah blah, and so anyway, I feel like there is a strong current of people who don't want to buy into this, not just because they're not particularly materialistic people. I mean, hey, we all like having nice things. We love having nice things. I mean, why wouldn't we? But some people are seeing the impact that having so much stuff has on the environment and on other people in the planet. And ultimately, I think that, globalization is this evil word, it's global business, but the internalization of a global perspective is a really great thing, because really, there's a lot of people who feel like we can't be happy while there are people who are suffering so we can be happy. That's incomplete. That equation is never gonna work out. And so we have to find different ways to express our beliefs in the culture. And I feel like we really do have power as consumers, and it's a great non-violent way to say, hey, this is who I am and this is how I do things, and I think that's what the book is trying to support. It's like you want to do your own thing. You're not going to make so much money, so bake your own bread. I do it every day, and it's just becomes part of your thing, and it's way cheaper, and
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned that. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back to talk more on great ideas out of this wonderful book, Lemons and Lavender. We'll be right back.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
And welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We are having a fantastic conversation today with the author of Lemons and Lavender, Billee Sharp. And Billee, welcome back to the show.
Hi, thanks.
I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed our first half hour of conversation. And now, speaking of the topic that we are speaking of, we're talking about the new paradigm. We're talking about allowing ourselves to look at the world in a different way, and perhaps being a positive aspect on the planet. One of the main things that many of us, especially here, well, actually around the world, I should say, is the economy and the drastic situation that is happening not only in the United States but throughout the world, in Greece and Europe and whatnot. And it's funny because you'll hear many of the conspiracy theorists say, "Oh, they're stealing your money and all this," and my reaction, and I'm wondering if it's probably the same reaction as yours, is that good. It's time for a new economy. It's time to look at the world in a different perspective. And as we're going through this change, we are going to need to take control of our resources. And your first chapter is revolutionary budgeting. And I like this word that you used, extreme thrifting. Can you tell us a little bit, share with us and share with our listeners, what are some positive things that we can do in these times, and if we are making it by choice to move away from the global economy?
Well, my ideas about extreme thrifting. I mean, it's funny we're talking about this because, as you know, in San Francisco right now, there's a huge polarization of residents, and that meaning that the people who have been here for the last or who've moved here in the last 20 years moved here for very different reasons than the people who are coming here now. And you know, the new influx are these, you know, largely people working in the tech sector, and they want to live in the city. And you know, we already live here, and you know, we live this kind of modest, I mean, you know, alternative lifestyle in a great city that has great amenities because we've voted for the kind of people who've given us the space to create, you know, this place. And now everyone's being priced out, and it's very difficult because of course it's not, you know, it's not about individuals, it's about market forces and how we, you know, how we articulate that. I mean, for example, I write in Lemons and Lavender about this local guy, Tree, who put together the free farm and has given away hundreds of thousands of pounds of free organic vegetables in the city to food banks, to families. You just have to come and say, I need some eggplant, and he's going to give them to you if he has them. And his whole ethos is cities can feed themselves. We don't need anyone to go without food in this city because there's enough land here that we can amend and treat, you know, and grow on. But, you know, the free farm just became the foundation of yet another condo building here. And, you know, will there be another, you know, you need a little bit of time on a piece of land to get it to a state where it's producing food. And right now, everything's being snapped up so fast that I don't know if how the free farm will continue. I mean, I feel like good ideas will always find a way, and maybe the free farm's going to become free 100 back gardens of people in the city who want to provide free organic food for the people who don't have. But it's very tight here now for a lot of people. I mean, my rent went up $400 this year, which was like a huge hike. You know, my husband's a musician. I'm a writer. We have 2 kids. One of them's in college. I mean, when people say, you know, the middle class is under attack and the bourgeoisie is sinking, it's just like, yeah, we are, you know, just about, you know, we're really, everyone here who is not part of this new economy is really suffering. And something that brought it home to me in a very poignant way was this Thanksgiving. The day before Thanksgiving, the local charity that provides turkeys for homeless dinners was 200 turkeys short, and they were also down $900,000 in donations in 1 year. And you know why that is? It's because we, the people who volunteer and support charities, don't have that money anymore. And guess what? These people are coming in, have way more money than we ever had, and yet they're not feeling the need to support. And, you know, that day I posted on Facebook, hey, you know, Facebook should, you know, need new PR, because if I was advising Zuckerberg, I'd tell him to drop 200 turkeys and $1 million on that charity and get some love from the community here, because that's all we want to see. We're not saying, you know, this is our place, you can't come in. We're saying, hey, this is our cool space, come and join us, especially if you have resources to bring, you know. It's just like, don't just be taking away all this good work we've done. I mean, San Francisco's always been, it's a gold rush town. There's always been super rich people here. And, we have a huge homeless problem. It's not like everything was happy before this happened, but the pressure on the real estate market and the rental market is, it's really, I mean, it's kind of, it's heartbreaking in a way, but, we also appreciate, change is inevitable and things are going to change, but do they have to change for the worse? I hope not. I hope.
Right.
But we are really going to have to practice a lot more extreme thrift to stay here, and that really means cutting back on everything that is extraneous and isn't absolutely, I mean, hey, never a better time to become vegan, because it is the healthiest way to eat for the planet, and you don't have to be strict. Once in a great while you can buy an organic chicken and it's like a medieval feast, but you actually can eat very well and for a fraction of the price, eating the highest quality ingredients. Your slow foods and your produce can all be organic. You just got to take the time to prepare it, but it's going to work out. You're going to save money that way. And I feel like people equate spending money with pleasure. And that's because, in the last, 150 years, we have had, your average person has had a little bit of extra money to buy things in, and it becomes part of our behavior, and it's people get addicted to shopping, right? And you have little kids and you're awake in the middle of the night thinking, how am I going to buy that Fisher Price garage? Whatever. But breaking from that is a revelation, and I think that if we're really going to sustain human life on the planet, then we have to break down these false idols of worshipping materialism and having, because it's not sustainable for any of us in the end. And so, be extremely thrifty. And then when you do treat yourself to something, it becomes all the more pleasurable.
Oh, I can relate to that. I can definitely relate to that. In speaking about organic produce, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think this is a very big myth, or perhaps there's some confusion around it. Those of us, like myself, because quite honestly, I still have a hard time justifying buying organic because of the higher price. Are there any particular, let's say, ingredients that you find that go longer or last longer or give you much more for your money than others?
Well, I mean, the first thing, Bernard, I would say is, buy in season. Don't be wanting to make something with organic produce that has had to be imported and is, going to have that added onto the price. Eating in season should keep the price down, because it's what's available now. But really, it's just like if you compare. I mean, and I can't speak for what's happening in Virginia, but for example, Whole Foods, which I believe is in every state in the union, often you'll see organic right next to conventionally produced, and the price point will be a matter of cents. I mean, I don't even want to get into the Whole Foods thing, and I it's not somewhere where I shop regularly, but I do compare prices, and sometimes they have something on offer. I'm going to buy something that my family eats. I'm going to go and buy that. So that was my cat just knocking my thing out. And I thought I had switched the volume down on my phone, but I may have to rip that out of the wall.
That's okay.
But I would say, really, what are we talking about? You're going to buy a bunch of fresh kale, organic. It's going to be $2, $2.50. Conventional, it's going to be $1.89. So it's like, I that's not buying the conventional at 15 cents cheaper is not extreme thrift. It's not seeing the issue. And the issue here is not, is organic better? Is it nutritionally better? I don't think there's any doubt that it is. And there's plenty of studies which show that. On the other hand, the reasons not to support the conventionally produced produce is because we're putting too much chemical fertilizer into the soil. We're losing our topsoil. We're losing our bees because of this toxic cocktail of pesticides. Agribusiness was a great idea, supposed to work for everyone. It didn't work. Let's just let that one go and start better farming practices, which are going to mean that we can continue to farm. Because if we continue to work with GMO seeds and this whole toxic cocktail of pesticides and insecticides and fertilizers, we're just destroying what we have, the earth, which we're part of. And I feel like it's, I will go without stuff rather than, they don't have organic garlic. Well, I guess there's not going to be garlic in this spaghetti sauce, because every time I buy something which is commercially produced, I'm buying into that whole ethos, and I wholeheartedly do not.
That's a wonderful way of looking at your shopping habits. I feel that many of us, we seem to justify going ahead and buying something because it is 50 cents cheaper, or it's available. Like you said, we've gotten so spoiled, for lack of a better term, and it's time for us to really just to step back and say, like you just said, oh, well, the garlic's not available. I'm not going to have garlic today. And,
right.
and it really is about changing the way that we think, and how to create new thinking patterns and behaviors, physical behaviors. Now, Billy, to bring up to change the subject a little bit, we have about 10 more minutes on this segment. You have a wonderful term that you use in Chapter 3 called freakonomics. I kind of like that. It could be taken as freaky, freakonomics or freakonomy. It's a term that I use a lot. What is your definition of a freakonomy?
Well, it's just this. We're really in this same discussion about seeing economy differently, and I have to just do a quick plug for David Graeber's fantastic, huge, almost impenetrable, but really a good, if you get snowed in, maybe you can buy it online and read it, because it's a really important text, and it's called Debt, the First 5,000 Years.
Wow.
And he is, some people call him an anarchist anthropologist. I think that's a sensational way to describe him. He definitely thinking out of the box. He's an economic anthropologist. He looks at cultures and he looks at their economic systems. And he was one of the guys who was so articulate and part of the kind of main core of the Occupy Wall Street movement. He's also a very serious academic. He just was the head of anthropology at Goldsmiths in London. He's an American. He actually lost his tenure at Yale when he published this Debt, the first. But, one of the things he says first is that, and debunks in, a very thick chapter, is this idea that any economics book that you read will say, before there was money, there was barter, but barter didn't work, so we invented money. This is totally, there's nothing to support, and there's no culture, right, primitive, past, present, that's documented that ever shows that people were bartering kind of random objects back and forth. We were always in a system of credit, and so debt was around before money was. This idea that, hey, I have all this wood now, and that I'm giving it to the neighbors, and later they're going to have, that'll be worth. There's always been an abstract way of people relating their exchange back and forth, and I think we really have been brainwashed. It's like, so many ideas that people go, well, this is the way it is. This is, the banks do this because this is the way they do it. It's like somehow we've stopped questioning whether things work or not, because the system just seems so big and so complete and so difficult to change. Well, of course, we have to have, you can't just go into the void. But I think that in economics, some really great groundbreaking stuff is emerging, like this, Bitcoin, for example.
I was just going to say that, yep.
I'm really trying to understand it. I'm really trying. I'm reading stuff. I'm rereading it, and I'm trying to grasp it. And I'm also trying to wonder if my computer skills are big enough for me to actually have one. But these systems which are trying to, monetary systems which exist outside of a national economy and are based in just people's belief in the it's like, I think there's a kernel of something we can really change the way, our resources are distributed in the world without being anything as scary as, a communist or having a political ideology. It's more of I feel like what's emerging is this intellectual, just code of ethics. Like I'm talking about these, kids who really see through it all. They've grown up in a world where there's so much. Teenagers hate to pay for stuff. They hate the idea that someone's making a profit. It's like, how not surprising to me that it's teenagers who are really pulling back from Facebook so much. And it's not because they're fickle. It's because they see the they see the Wizard of Oz. They see the man behind the curtain. And they go, no, I don't want to buy into your thing, and it's very encouraging. And I think that, their concept of sharing is really enhanced. And, people can laugh at, hippies and their tie-dye T-shirts and their Birkenstocks, but what seems to me is in the last 40 years of this rampant consumerist mainstream society, those counterculture ideas which are about sharing and about love and loving the planet and loving each other are really a very, it's stronger today than it was then, and that's the way it should be.
I couldn't agree more with you. It seems that this, I call it the consciousness movement, but people have many other names for it, seems to be spreading across the planet. And this whole idea, especially in the last 2 years, let's say with the Occupy movements around the world, seem to be based in the youth saying that we are not going to give in to this way of living, this paradigm that has been here before we got here, kind of like what you're saying. And I find it very inspiring. So, thank you to the under 25s out there that have said, no, 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 we're not going to take this. This is greater, and we're going to do something to make sure that we all don't have to live like that. We have to take a break, and we will be right back.
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We are having a fantastic discussion today with Billee Sharp. She is the author of Lemons and Lavender, the Eco Guide to Better Homekeeping. And Billee, I'm just enjoying this discussion with you so much, and I want to thank you. Let me ask you, I have a certain, and this is going back to what we have been discussing over the last hour. For me, I like to call myself a spiritual activist. And as a spiritual activist, while I will support, let us say, the Occupy movement or the movement to label GMOs and whatnot, the reality of it is, for me, that we come up with alternative ways of living. And you seem to have done this with your book, and especially with our conversation. I was wondering, what are your thoughts on the idea that the number of people that are creating alternative ways of living, all the sooner we will create a better way of living throughout the planet?
Well, I definitely think that I'm with Terence McKenna on his theory of novelty uptake as what propagates change in society. I don't want to say progress, because I think progress is really loaded, and I think we've begun to take it as synonymous with the next step. It's just like that this just to touch for one more moment on the GMO.
Yes.
With the ideas that came out with the idea that GMO seeds had been invented. And the ideas behind that was, this is great. These seeds are going to feed more people, and we're going to solve the problems of feeding everyone in the world. Well, that's a great idea. I remember when I first heard that, I was like, wow, well, how did they do that? And then there didn't seem to be a lot of, and then the story came out, and then the research in the field has been coming out that it's not all great, and these may be this is a change in our practice, which is not necessarily progress. The fact that it's a development, and it's invention isn't always good, but sometimes invention's really good, but it gets thrown to the wayside because it doesn't fit in a certain model. And I think we have to try and remember the things we did that worked before. We thought we had a better way of doing it. It's like making bread. It's just like people go, yeah, I wish I had a bread machine because I don't know how to make bread. Making bread's really easy. You don't need a machine to do it. It's not rocket science. Of course, the first loaf you're going to make is going to be kind of District 11. It's going to be this hard, horrible, and your kids are going to go, Mom, this is disgusting, or whatever. But, it's only going to cost you $1 every time you try and make a loaf. And by the time you're on your third, people will be like coming in from the street. What's that amazing smell? Oh my God, you baked that bread? It's this easy thing that, is there for us to do. We have to remember the things from the past, but novelty. It's like, hey, if it works, we're going to do it. If you take honey and lemon and ginger because you feel a cold coming on, or you've got a cold and it works, you're going to keep doing it. Mm-hmm. Whether someone tells you that, hey, you can go and buy this thing for $10 and it's got a lot of stuff in it with really long names and it's science and it's going to cure you. If you're, it's like, we do the things that work, and we have to just, and again, this is something that the kids have better than us because they've been so heavily marketed to. They see through all that. You know, they're not they're not in the same mindset that we are around. We're still kind of, it's all, you know, fireworks going off, and we're, you know, we've grown up in an era of being marketed to, and it's like deprogramming yourself. It's like, hey, not everything on the market is good. Not everything on the market is bad. You know, well, not everything on the market is bad. But you know, we have to kind of really be thinking in all ways, and you know, price point is a big thing, but you know, I won't take it from people as an argument. Oh, well, I do this because it's cheaper. I mean, the only argument I accept that with is I'm driving a gas car. You know, I hate it. I'm driving a Honda Civic because it gets 400 miles for $40, and you know, hey, it may, you know, guys' heads may not be swiveling as I drive past, but I can live with that. It's like it's not a glamorous car, but it's the best I can do to use less gas because I don't have enough money to buy an eco car. And you know, so it's like everyone's off the hook on that one as far because we've got to get around. Mass transit isn't great in a lot of places.
Most places, yeah.
Much easier for people in Europe where mass transit is more developed, and also where the cost of petrol, gas is higher. So everyone, you know, you go to Europe and you're like, oh my God, everyone's driving little potatoes around.
Yeah.
I mean, tiny cars.
Yeah, I got to share this because you're making me feel a little bit better, because I recently had to go to petroleum, but I have to share this. I wanted a scooter. I was like, you know what? I live downtown. I don't need to have a car. I can drive everywhere I need to go with a scooter. So I bought an electric scooter.
Yay.
But I live in Roanoke, Virginia, which is in the mountains, and the electric scooter would not go up the hills. So I recently, actually it was about a year and a half ago, I ended up buying a gas scooter. But I will say I get 100 miles to the gallon. So I will say I felt so guilty because I stopped driving, period, because of the petroleum. I wanted to do all electric, but unfortunately living here with the hills, I couldn't have an electric scooter. It just wouldn't make it. But so thank you for bringing that up.
It's so funny. That happened to a friend of mine in West Marin as well. She bought this electric scooter and she was just like, it was so painful getting over the hill. And, you know, the technology isn't there. I mean, I think Tesla's fantastic and people laugh at me when I play the lottery, but, you know, you never know. It's a crazy life, you know, and that's the only way I'm ever going to be able to afford a $60,000 car or what, you know, whatever it is. But, you know, I feel like, you know, if I suddenly was able to, you know, sure, I'd look longingly at those beautiful gas-powered cars that I can't afford at the moment because, you know, there's some great, you know, but it's like my conscience wouldn't let me invest in that technology. I'm doing it because it's expedient and because I'm just not hardcore. I live up a big hill, getting a bus. It's like, you know, I feel like Bilbo Baggins. It takes me an hour and a half to get anywhere, you know, on public transport. And I do use public transport and we do have one car. And it's funny, you know, it's like this old way of thinking that, God, Billy, how do you manage? You only have one car. It's like, yeah. You know, it's like we're a family.
It's called sharing.
You know, it's just like sometimes my husband works out of you know, he works in a studio that's, you know, 50 miles away. So he has the car and yeah, so that when I have to take public transport and when my kid has to go to his guitar lesson on public transport, yeah, we have to allow, you know, an hour and a half. It's ridiculous in a tiny city like this, but this is how our mass transit is. It's just not developed to be really easy. And, you know, the pushback is the more people who use it, the more we'll get to have the service. But our whole Google bus thing is a whole different thing going on here now anyway, where these tech workers are having, their companies are laying on their transport and using the public bus stops, whereas we're like, yeah, go ahead, my bus is not coming for another 20 minutes because only 2 come an hour or whatever, but your buses, it's this whole thing, Bernard. Our whole discussion is about the system, how we're in it, and how we manage to propagate our ideas about how different it can be from inside. And I think we're enjoying it.
And it sounds like you are, and I think that's a very positive thing and a very positive example to set for everybody, and our listeners as well. My next question, in reference to all of this, and I've gone through it myself, the idea of scaling back, the idea of again making time for public transport. I mean, I can't do food shopping on my scooter. I can't. I have to take a bus, and then I will pay for a taxi to bring back my 30 bags of groceries for the week. But the reality of it is that many people feel that they're better than that, or B, they don't have the time for it. So my question to you right now, Billee, is what could you advise people, our listeners, how to better associate and or accommodate themselves in scaling back and in creating a better way of living for themselves?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of the issues with getting the food we want to do with, where we can, not only how we're going to get it and get it home, but how to access really what we want. And I'm very keen on the idea of buying clubs and cooperatives.
Yes.
Because I think particularly for people who are living in fairly dispersed communities, they do tend to be the people who are good at this as well, because they can identify themselves in the community. Anyone wearing Birkenstocks, you can say, hey, joining my buying club. But when you activate something like that in your community, you're also really, then you are creating community, because you're linking up with people with a common aim. And funnily enough, the first co-op I ever belonged to was in North Carolina, and I was living on the Outer Banks in 1987, I want to say, 1988. And we knew this couple on Roanoke Island who were park rangers, and they heard our accents and they were like, interested. They had young kids, and me and my friend were a little bit younger anyway. They really took us under their wing, which was great because we got lots of park ranger perks, and hung out with them and their kids, and in their garden where they were growing cilantro, which I didn't realize was coriander for the longest time. Anyway, they always had great food. A lot of it they were making fresh salsa. It was the summer. They had all these tomatoes, but they always had this, the great quality stuff. Where do you get this risotto rice? Where are you getting this lemon echinacea they belong to a buying group, and they were all met up in someone's garage, and they took us along, and it was such a trip, because they kind of, it was like a total social event. There were things that they were buying all the time: flour, sugar, whatever their staples were. But then people would put forward arguments because you have to buy things in a case. Look, this peanut butter is amazing, and blah blah blah, and we should get it. Or more the stuff that, they wanted other people to try. Like nowadays it would be, chia or hemp seeds, extolling the virtues of these obscure, new things, and people going, yeah, okay, I'll go down. Of course, I, kind of went intending to spend $10 and managed to spend $50, but that we ate everything that we got from there, and it was all good stuff, and it was a way of, and we didn't have a car, and we were in America, there's no buses on the Outer Bank on an hourly basis, so it was community forming. We met a lot of other people through being involved with that buying group that summer, and it really enriched our experience of living there, and finding like-minded people, because the kind of people who want that kind of food maybe like the same books that you like, or the same music, or share a political sensibility. And I think, I hate this thing. People sort of go, oh, the community. It's like, what are you talking about? There's no community. I've lived in this house for 13 years and I know a few of my neighbors. But if I'd lived in this street 40 years ago when it was built, I would have known everyone, and I would have known all the names of their kids. I probably would have known when their birthdays were. This, community has been really, really eroded on the lowest level to the lowest level. And every time you reach out and do things with people to make things happen the way you want them, you're it's this regenerative thing. I really go to Marshall McLuhan again and again when I'm trying to articulate big things, because his maxim, the medium is the message. It's like in the 60s and 70s, and to some extent the 80s too, TV was the message. People were really, under the power of, everyone, was the hive of the moment. We all connected through the TV, and guess what? There was plenty of advertising on it. We were all being marketed to, and we were all, and it really became a kind of our community. And I feel like, in many ways right now, social media is the message, and the idea that we can, share whatever we like, how much we're enjoying our cappuccino, or this petition to save dolphins in Japan, or these tips. It's this incredibly potent force, and I feel like we should, none of us be afraid to share our views about how we want our society to look. And I know people often tend towards conservatism, and I also think social media is very much in its infancy, and we'll look back on the way we communicate through the internet in 5-10 years time, and we'll be blushing with how gauche and how sophisticated it is right now. But it is our way of sharing. I mean, I just see so much. I mean, right now I'm in love with Hempcrate, which is this trademarked building material.
Yes.
Making in England. I want to build a Hempcrate house, but guess what? All I have to do is spend about an hour following back links, and I will be able to get a telephone number of some, crazy Hempcrate guy in the south of England, and we'll start talking about how, what's the deal? How do you do, how it's, I love it. And our ideas are strong, and they're going to, revolutionize the way we live, I hope, because I see that, the counterculture and the conscious society really is seeing the big picture, and really, connects with the mother and realizes we're all spaceships on a spaceship here, and we, there's no getting off, or, you find a way off, bye, but this is where we belong. We don't have to be an aberration. We can be a functioning part of the whole. And I think that's really what we all want. And, you know, it's just like we can give ourselves a hard time for using petrol right now, but you and I will be the first person in line to buy the first affordable electric car. You know, it's change is coming because we want it. It's just about keeping the options open and keeping creative, allowing yourself to be creative and allowing your good ideas to be shared. Even if your good idea is just a no-rise bread recipe, it's all good stuff. It's all pushing us in the direction we need to go in. And, you know, I think if you understand that, then it's like, sure, life's a struggle right now, but, you know, we're on the right path and we're sharing. And when we're sharing, you know, it's just who we are. We're only really happy when everyone's happy. You know, everything has to be there, vibrating at the same frequency. Otherwise, you know, we feel it.
I couldn't agree with you more. I am a proponent of the idea that we are one human family, and that we are going through the how shall we say, the birthing canal of greater things, and it might be a little bit painful, but throughout all of this, we must remember we are one human family. Take care of one another and support each other during this this birthing process to a greater way of living.
Yeah, I think, you know, I had the very great pleasure of hearing Dennis McKenna speaking on Friday night at the California Institute of Integral Studies. And he was really pushing the Neurons to Nirvana movie, which is all about really an evaluation of how the scientific community has, you know, fallen in and out of engaging with the psychedelic community. And just so much great positive stuff that these ethnobotanists, ethnopharmacologists, people who've that you've been laughed at by, you know, their contemporaries and discredited, but yet now, you know, the use of psychedelics in conventional medicine is being acknowledged. I mean, you know, again, it's this thing of like, you know, be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? You know, we're thinking of things all the time. Some of the things we think of are really good. Some of them are not so good.
Right.
Some actually look really good, but are actually really, really bad. There's no shame in that. It's like this, you know, one of the things I really say in the book is, you know, there seems to be this kind of shame around thrift, like somehow, you know, it's not cool to save money. It's characterized as penny pinching and being a miser and not being generous. Well, you know, those ideas are really, you know, you follow it back and it doesn't make any sense because, you know, saving, not being wasteful with water means conserving our resources. You know, it's not like, oh, you know, I hate it when people say to me, well, you know, I take really long showers because I don't pay for water. You know, just like, well, hey, we're all paying for that water, you know.
Exactly.
It kind of belongs to all of us, and we're so caught up with thinking that way. You know, you have to check yourself every day, every decision. But you know, that this is the way we'll make it the way we really want to make it, which is the great thing about being here alive on the planet and being able to be the real embodiment of your creative beliefs. It's like, okay, well, if you believe in all this stuff that we're doing, which obviously lots of people do, then you do it. I'm not, you know, but, you know, if you're interested, check what I'm doing and check how, you know, I'm enjoying my time on the planet. You know, I'm feeling good because I'm being conscious. And I guess, I guess we all have our lapses and what have you, but and some people will say, well, she never made any money, so she just, so it's really happy. Guess what? I am really, I'm as happy as I've been so far, and I was still trying. I'm not saying, I don't have to work a lot. I do, especially right now. I mean, it's just awful. We're in the same place. We don't, we haven't kind of got any more to show for our life in that kind of material sense. And yet it costs us a lot more to be here. But it's an interesting process to go through as an individual and as a community, and we'll see what happens to San Francisco. I mean, it may very well be that it becomes this, just ultra wealthy, little bubble of people and lots of expensive shops, and all the people who work, as they pretty much do. Like, no police apparently live in San Francisco because it's too expensive for them. All the teachers and everything will, be across the bay, further out. But, it's like, it's about your...
And now, back to your host, Bernard Alvarez.
Welcome back to the Just Bernard Show here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We are discussing, about a whole new paradigm here today with Billee Sharp. Just before the break, we had some technical difficulties, and I hope we have Billee back. Billee, are you there?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I don't know what happened.
Yes, I think just the internet dropped. Like I said, it's snowing here, and it's still snowing. Wow. But the internet seems to get a little funny when it's this cold outside and windy. But Billee, I wanted to ask you, because I'm sitting here thumbing through your book. We're talking about so much of the philosophy and the ideas behind the book. I just want to ask you something simple. And why did you name it Lemons and Lavender?
Well, that's a name that I own as a business. And I don't know if you read about when my kids were little. My husband's a musician and a producer and a brilliant artist, but it's like artists, sometimes they're making a lot of money, sometimes they're not. And I really, always wanted to contribute, but, I had two little kids at home, and I wasn't, that became my career. Anyway, we got to this point. I was like, I've got to get a job. And then I worked for a while for an internet company in New York, but, it was very, difficult. I was drinking coffee really late at night to write reports and this kind of stuff, and I was like, oh, this is just not working. I'm miserable. So I came up with this idea to start an eco-cleaning company, and I think the name sort of came so quickly because I sort of thought, what am I going to clean with, that's natural. And of course I thought baking soda, vinegar, lemons and lavender oil. It's just disinfectant, smells great, it's calming, disinfecting. So I just thought lemons and lavender, what a great name for a company. I mean, it's actually, a little bit, most cleaning companies are like, Mom's cleaning company or something. So people really know what it is. You're like, lemons and lavender? But it was fine. It worked well. And it was true. Those were two of the main ingredients that I would use for cleaning. And I offered a hypoallergenic cleaning service with no perfume stuff, so no lemons or lavender. And I guess in an area like this, it wasn't so hard to, there were people who were receptive to the idea of that, really, just out there. I used Craigslist. It was also a business that really just cost me the price of my business license. I already had a vacuum cleaner. I already, I didn't, it's great.
Right.
Rolls, turn them into rags, and it was great to get to employ other people and set my own, because I want, then my kids were in school and, so I had between 9 and 3. And then I wanted them to come home and have something to eat, chill out, do their homework. But I wanted to be there. I didn't want to be, later in time, I had an opportunity to work with my editor at Viva Editions, Brendan Knight, was working for another publisher at the time, and an opportunity came up to do publicity. And I'd done a lot of publicity work in my art world experience with the record label. And, as a writer, she was like, come work in publishing and see how it works. And so I did, and it was a great experience. Luckily, quite short-lived. I did it for a year and a half, and I really, that it was kind of sad making for me. I get home at 7:00, and I would need to kind of have 10 minutes by myself with a glass of wine and, whatever other, attitude adjustment devices. Because it was so intense, like working in this environment, 5 days a week, and I'd get home and I could feel myself becoming this automaton, like how was school, like remember to ask how school was, but I wasn't engaged in the same way. I wasn't doing what I'd done previously, which was, stood in the kitchen chopping up onions, listening to this endless detailed breakdown of whoever's school day, I was listening to at the time, and, really being engaged. It was a very, I got laid off because I guess that was 2009, the beginning of the year. And, I was the people who had been hired last were the first to go, and I could see it coming, and I was like, hooray, I'm good. Because I'll go back to, running an eco cleaning company is, it's hard work. People work hard for their money out there, and not just, with elbow grease actually doing the cleaning, but being responsible, accruing work, making sure your workers are working right, making sure you're taking care, it had its, it was a lot of, when I give myself a hard time and go, God, you still haven't, published a novel or even a collection of short stories. And I think, yeah, well, I've been busy too. It's true. I'm lucky I even have, anything written down is the way I feel sometimes. Cause, and this is another thing, that women, it's like, really, women are supposed to have a career that has a, huge salary attached to it, and bring up well-adjusted children, manage a household, blah, blah, blah. You can't do all that. And, you have a career, then you're not going to be, my career was being, a mum and running the house for a family and being involved in everyone's stuff. And, touch wood, unless something really crazy happens at this late point, because my youngest is 16 now, I feel like, hey, I followed my intuition on this, and I didn't kind of boost my, I didn't have this great career where everyone was patting me on the back for having a great career, but my kids really, are the product of a loving, caring upbringing. And I've done I feel like we made, we sacrificed on the one hand things that to me weren't a sacrifice, because I had kids, and that became the most important responsibility in my life, was to do right by them. And you learn from your own childhood. You take from that all the good stuff that, hopefully that happened to you, and you creatively work through the proposition. But having a big career wasn't something that I felt I could fit in. And I wrote a response to Anne-Marie Slaughter's piece in the Atlantic last year about women still not having it all. It's like, hey, it's just like, some of us never thought that was feasible or even wanted that. There's only so many hours, in a day. And I really feel that having a family and being someone in the community that other people will know, oh, well, Billie's at home, she can take that package, or, blob, they're at home, I can call them and ask them for a lift. It's all really valid, important stuff. And
Absolutely.
It's almost beyond putting a price tag on.
And I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I feel that in today's day and age, like you said, so many of us get lost in the value or the economic value of our chosen path, whether it be, doing free radio shows every week like myself, or being the person who you can drop a package off to. We all have value, and I love that you have listen to your intuition and follow your own path to do what is right for you. And I feel that our world would be a much better place if we would get over the price tag, listen to our heart, and do what is intended for us to do as individuals to grow and to be a part of a community.
Right. Well, I think you describe yourself as spiritually conscious, and I feel that one thing that our system is particularly devoid of is this kind of spiritual conscious development of a person through life. And I think that for some people it's more obvious than for others. And I wasn't brought up religiously. My parents had a mixed marriage. They just thought it was all a load of nonsense. They didn't really replace it with anything. And I've always found it very difficult to, really have faith in that sort of blind sense. But I do have a lot of faith in the basic goodness of humans, and the fact that we're all connected to each other and to everything else on the planet and to the whole universe. And I feel that people have articulated through their art and through philosophy and through their ways of living that we're capable of great things, and really what's greater than living in harmony. And we may have lost sight of that just a little bit of time, a couple of thousand years ago. But I believe that, contrary to the more conservative estimates of human community, I want to say, rather than civilization, I believe there were hundreds of thousands of years of humans living together that's undocumented.
Yeah. Because
it was pre-literate. And these aren't my ideas. This is Rianne Eisler, all the Chalice and the author of Chalice and the Bray.
Yeah, that's a great book, by the way. I highly recommend it to everybody.
Yeah, that's a great read, and she's a great thinker as well. She wrote a subsequent book all about societies where the female principle was elevated in the male population, and where Scandinavia basically is her example. And she was very very involved in this idea of women evolving and being taken, as seriously as men, and treated intellectually as equals, and all really good stuff.
Yeah, no, I love that book. As a matter of fact, I think that's where I picked up the term matrifocal versus patriarchal.
Right.
That was one of the best books I read I believe I read in my 20s. It was a fantastic book. And as a matter of fact, speaking of alternative histories, I'm going to do a quick plug here, but it goes with what you're saying. Is next week we have Stephen Mailer, who's coming on to talk about the alternative history of ancient Egypt and the Kemetic civilization, which is not documented. And just like you said, I agree. There's a whole history that is completely either overlooked or is just not available because they weren't literate.
Yeah, I think the more, and probably Stephen's research is more heavily, is drawing evidence from, hard data, carbon dating,
Right.
being able to analyze
Yep.
the contents of someone's stomach 3,000 years later. It's changing our ideas about what went before, what was happening even pre-Neolithic, because what we thought had been the case was really just a projection of, it's like the Romans. I love this. The Romans, all when I was growing up, all the history books said, well, the Romans came to Britain, and one of the great things they did was built all these amazing Roman roads everywhere. They were so straight and they were so direct, and it was a good, the example of how the Romans had occupied Britain and
Right.
improved life for us. Well, guess what? Now in the last few years, they've been, doing archaeological work on Roman roads. And yeah, here's the Roman road. And then they dig a little deeper underneath, different road surface. But these roads were there 500, 600 years, as far as they can tell, before the Romans came. So that was Roman propaganda.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always, people were like, how, the Roman roads always run, by the big, monolithic sites, and Iron Age hill forts and that kind of stuff. And everyone was like, oh yeah, well, the Romans were keeping, showing them that they had a way to get to all their important places really fast. It was nonsense. It was Roman propaganda. Those roads were there. They were straight and amazing and beautiful, and they were built by, so it's just like we're lucky to be here now. There's so much information. It's about sifting through and making our own choices, what we want to believe, and talking about that and sharing those ideas is what creates conscious community, and we're really lucky that we can do that on a global level now. All this, the boundarylessness of social media and the sharing of ideas really around the planet is a great thing.
I couldn't agree more. I feel that, even for me personally, I've been, for lack of a better term, I've been on this spiritual activist consciousness path probably since my teens, but it wasn't until MySpace, actually. Remember MySpace? Whoa, that was a long time ago. It wasn't until then that I found the way to be able to share and connect and create community. And that has literally been my calling now for the past several years, is to create the idea of communication, sharing information, and of course, sharing it with people like yourself and having people like you come and join us to share. But I couldn't be more grateful that we have this available to us. And I feel sorry for anybody who's afraid of it. I feel people that I hear a lot, and maybe you've heard the same thing, that people are afraid to share. And they've been made to be afraid because they might have an employer that's watching, or a job there,
Not to mention the government.
And the government.
Well, I think ideas are free, and it's I am absolutely, the fact that I I support things like, the right of return for Palestinians, for example, does not make me a terrorist and doesn't make me a terrorist supporter in any way, and I don't like this bowing down, this whole big brother mentality. It's people who are inside the system and are fearing it. It's like, don't be afraid of it. It's our system to make it whatever way we want it. And let's not forget that the web was invented by the very best of the counterculture, Well and Stewart Brand and all those people who were first, the first generation of people. These are the people who gave us the first picture of the planet from outer space. These are the people who made NASA show us what we looked like from outer space. I mean, these are people who have the big picture, and they knew that the internet was going to be this incredible vehicle for communication, because it's just about understanding, and figuring it out together. And this is, this is our tool, and we mustn't be afraid to use it. And because why be afraid when your goal is just greater understanding, community, sharing, love? That's what it's for. It's not for selling stuff or spying or, I feel like fear is something we all have to avoid, but we all have to look it in the eye and go, what am I afraid of here? And, is it real, or am I just am I self-censoring by buying into a fear climate? I don't know. I mean, maybe just an idealist.
I love idealism. I mean, thank you for that. I agree that, the idea that, okay, in life, we must maintain a certain, I don't want to say consciousness, but common sense. And if you're using common sense, there is no room for fear. That's the way I look at it. Have common sense, do what's best for you and the world around you, and there is nothing to fear.
Right. It's it's about being here now consciously, and and articulating that where you can. I mean, it's not like I think social media is just this great big happy field of cornflowers and we're all I mean, I appreciate people are losing their lives because people are such poor communicators, and not necessarily the people who are losing their lives over it either. I mean, there's an etiquette which will evolve hopefully, and I really feel like the internet's so in its infancy, and it's very important right now that, we really own it. And I love like internet radio shows like, stations like yours that, afford a platform for all kinds of people, because, it's just like, who's to say that your ideas and my ideas aren't as valid as, anyone else's?
Yeah.
And deserve a way to connect with people. I love it. It's very democratizing, and again,
it is.
Parents says the novelty theory. What people like, they'll take up. If people like our ideas, then they'll read our book.
I got to cut you off, and I want to thank you. We're coming up, and we got to go. I thank you so much for joining us on today's show. We'll see you all next week. Thank you.
No.
There is no denying the world is awakening. We see it in the global uprisings and demonstrations of the people around the planet, and the new way of thinking and living that is arising naturally within each one of us and our communities. I have been a major player in this global shift and movement for over 20 years, and have helped tens of thousands of people around the world change their lives and find their voice in order to help create the paradigm change we so desperately need. Join me here at Revolution Radio on the Just Bernard Show every Tuesday at noon Eastern Time for 2 hours of powerful interviews and discussion with some of the most influential visionaries of consciousness, alternative media, and suppressed knowledge. We promise to reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience.